All right, YouTube. Trump is experiencing increasingly calls for him to pardon Julian Assange as well as Snowden and Manning. And I would support all three on the following principle. Julian Assange has done literally nothing wrong. He simply is the sort of spiritual head of an organization that publishes material that other people give him. And, by the way, I will say this for anyone who says, oh, well, you're just a Trumpite, and he fucked Hillary, and he's a Russian agent, and so you want him released because you're like, I don't know, a commie or something like that. It's a bunch of propaganda, as I explained before. No, I would have supported that long before this election began. In fact, I spoke to this, that I supported this years and years ago. As for Snowden, same thing. Snowden did nothing wrong. He revealed the fact to the American people that the government was engaged in unconstitutional activities. It is not unlawful for a person to disclose the fact that unlawful activities are occurring. Federal courts found this way. Two different federal courts both ruled that the NSA's blanket surveillance was unconstitutional. The only reason it wasn't shut down completely and immediately is that they put their order on stay. They said, okay, Congress needs to address this. They have the chance to revamp this program, to pass some sort of legislation to allow it to conform to the U.S. Constitution. Now, the Band-Aid on the gaping wound that Congress laid forth under Cruz and under Rand was more virulent about it. He wanted to go much further. At the end of the day, he didn't have the support necessary to continue filibustering. Ted Cruz took hold, Mitch McConnell took hold, and they put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, honestly. I believe that in the next couple of years, more cases will come up. The NSA's program will once again come under scrutiny. It'll probably be declared unconstitutional even in its supposedly reformed form because the surveillance is still going on. It's just that now the data is being held by corporations. I would say that's still unconstitutional. It doesn't matter if the government is outsourcing a violation of the Constitution to a private entity, it's still a violation of the Constitution. Snowden literally did nothing wrong. You saw the same variant of propaganda, by the way. I wonder if people notice this. The same propaganda that was aimed at WikiLeaks. Oh, they're allies of Russia. Obviously, Putin loves Trump and wants him to be elected. You saw that with Snowden. What was the immediate reaction of the Democratic Party when Snowden started coming out with this material? Oh, it's rather mysterious that he went off to China and Russia. Maybe he's an espionage agent. Of course he's not. He was trying to take shelter in nations that don't have an extradition treaty. But it lent itself easily to propaganda. It led itself easily to a tarnishing of his reputation. I don't believe he was an espionage agent. I think he saw something that was obviously wrong, that was obviously unlawful, and he disclosed it. Good on him for doing so. The fact is, he didn't commit treason. He did nothing to the American people. He simply created an inconvenient situation for Obama. Well, Obama's not the country. Obama's not the American people. There's a big difference between treason against your country and going against your government because the government is doing something wrong. Yes, I would say Edward Snowden absolutely should be pardoned. Chelsea Manning. In Manning's case, the law was violated. Yeah, that's kind of a form of espionage. Of course, Manning, like others, submitted material to WikiLeaks. Now, WikiLeaks doesn't go hacking and finding material. It simply publishes material that it vets and which it has received. There's a big difference. But Manning got a 35-year sentence for something that, come on, at the end of the day, it didn't lead to anybody getting killed. It didn't endanger our national security. It just disclosed the fact that in Iraq and other places, the United States was doing things that was unlawful. It's not treasonous. 35 years is an excessive sentence. What Trump should do for Manning is simply say, okay, time served. You've suffered for several years in the gulag. Now we're going to let you go. Keep the dishonorable discharge. Keep, obviously, not having security clearance. Come on. 35 years for that in Leavenworth? Yeah, I think that's excessive. As far as Assange is concerned, it doesn't even require a pardon. All you've got to do, and WikiLeaks has pointed this out, is say the DOJ needs to come out and confirm the fact that no laws are being broken by WikiLeaks. They're just publishing information that other people get them. There's a reason, by the way, why Edward Snowden is still operating on Twitter. There's a reason, despite the fact that it's a U.S. company. If the U.S. government thought for a moment that there was an actual legitimate criminal case against Snowden that would allow extradition and a negotiation for exchanging and paying off the Russians to deport him or something, if they thought that he had actually done something significant enough to put him on trial for treason, they would have shut down all of his access to any U.S. firm that was giving him a platform to talk on. They haven't done that. Why? Because there's no compelling case. The same is true of WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks continues to operate on Twitter too. WikiLeaks continues to be available in the United States. Why? Because they're not breaking any laws. They're simply publishing info that other people are giving to them. As for this Swedish case, Julian Assange, the child rapist or something, which you saw dug up, not a single Democrat took that seriously until he started publishing material on Clinton. Clinton has made the situation involving whistleblowers so much worse. So fantastically worse. By continuing the line of propaganda that Obama began with Snowden. Obama said nothing about WikiLeaks prior either. In fact, the Democratic Party applauded them when the Bush era was in swing and when materials were published showing, there was some screwy shit going on in Iraq. Yeah, I applauded them too, and I applaud them now. They were right to dump the documents on Clinton that they did. The people of the United States have a right to know if their politicians are completely and utterly lying to them, which, of course, the Clinton camp was throughout the whole thing. It doesn't matter if it was one-sided dumping of material. They've been dumping material before. Look at how people claim that WikiLeaks, they're like Russian agents. They've been paid millions by Russia or something. Well, that's funny because they've also dumped material pertaining to Russian political movements, including Putin's. How do you go from backhanding a regime to taking money from that regime to fuck around in somebody else's election? It just wouldn't make any common sense at all. Assange should be pardoned, or at the very least, the DOJ should be instructed, since you've had years and years, you've never built a case against WikiLeaks, so it's time to drop it. That's all they need to do. And by the way, if the United States does that, you think the UK or Sweden are going to continue in their witch hunts against Julian Assange? I don't think so. As far as Snowden, he should be pardoned. He should be brought back to the United States. He should be given an unconditional and full pardon for his role in leaking information because it led to cases in federal court that otherwise never would have been possible, let's face it. The NSA's own programs have been basically abashed. They've been completely cut off from all common sense when you have the former head of the NSA saying, it's nonsense. It's the way that they're collecting data isn't even a pragmatic way to do it. If there were pragmatism behind it, if it actually stopped terrorist attacks, there would at least be the pragmatist's argument to be made. Well, maybe it kind of sort of violates the Fourth Amendment, but it's necessary. But we then find, of course, it's not necessary. It violates the Constitution, and we don't even get anything from it. Now, I wouldn't be in favor of it even if it were an effective program, but at the same time, the average, normal, centrist in society would obviously see it that way. They'd probably come out and they'd say, well, it's stopping terrorists, so let's keep doing it even if it's inconvenient for the Constitution. I say no. At the same time, I would also say there is no pragmatic argument to be made. The program doesn't work. It costs a lot of money, it violates the Constitution, and it doesn't stop any terrorists, so what's the point of having it? Congress obviously thought that Snowden's material that was dumped was significant enough to have to argue at the 11th hour about how they were going to reform the program because federal courts additionally found it was significant enough to say the program was violating the Constitution. I said that before the courts weighed in on it. They found in agreement with that general spirit. The only reason the NSA is still collecting this data anyway is that Congress managed to fend off the attack on the NSA by saying, okay, now private companies will hold this data instead. It's still unconstitutional, but now you have to have a totally new court case in order to actually have a situation where the courts once again can find such. As for Manning, it's a violation of the Espionage Act to leak all the Iraq War stuff to WikiLeaks. Getting caught out doing it is the illegal part. The actual leaking is not illegal until you get caught, apparently. It's actually very funny. I think the military, though, should have been punished more, since apparently Manning was able to smuggle this material out on a CD simply by labeling it Lady Gaga. Yeah, that's a real good security barrier. Yeah. Oh, well, check the CD. Unless it's marked as like pop music, then who gives a damn? Who cares? Seriously, that's the layer of security that's used at the U.S. military pertaining to, potentially very classified documents. Okay, that makes total sense. It's a wonder that somebody hasn't completely destroyed our military servers by now, if that's the level of security that's required in operating them, honestly. But yeah, 35 years is excessive, and it's a simple solution. Just say, oh yeah, time served. Okay, you're free to go. It's not a pardon. It's just saying, okay, well, the sentence was too long. 35 years doesn't make sense, and so we're just going to let you go. That's what I would say we should do. Yeah, these people should be pardoned. They should be able to go about their lives. What Snowden did was patriotism. I wouldn't call it heroic, but I would call it patriotic. I weighed in on that years ago. Assange has broken no law. He's simply publishing material others give him. And then Manning has been given an extremely extended sentence for what, at the end of the day, hasn't actually brought any harm to our security apparatus. Now, I'll say this. One of the arguments used by people who want to see Manning rot in a cell and Snowden, brought back to the U.S. in chains, and Assange droned, apparently, if you listen to some of the Clintonistas. One of their arguments is, oh yeah, well, these individual cases, R.E. Snowden and Manning especially, might not themselves have endangered anyone, but it would set a precedent where other people might do the same, and in the future we might get some disastrous scenario. I'm completely opposed to that ideology, to that line of reasoning. We can't start thinking of precedent. We have to think of the act itself. We have to think of what the results were of their leaks, not some imaginary future leak that may not happen. That argument appears not to be the sort that would hold any legal weight anyway. I would say on that, I don't have any reason to believe that other people would endanger their generally high-paying jobs, their ego, their rank and position in many cases, for no reason. Snowden gave up a six-figure salary and a happy life in Hawaii in order to go and sit in frozen Russia, simply because he felt that constitutionally speaking what the government was doing was wrong. And he was right. The federal courts agree with him on that. It's just that Congress put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Now, in time, I suspect that these people will be released anyway, that Snowden will be pardoned, that it will be found by the DOJ eventually, if not under Trump, under someone, no law is being broken, that Manning will have served time, and has been given a draconian sentence for a relatively small infraction of the Espionage Act. That's my feelings anyway. I could be totally wrong, but that's the way I see it. Yeah, they should be free. Trump should do that. If he wants to score points with the youth vote, especially with the lean libertarian vote, yeah, it's the best way to do it. It's the best way to go about it. He can do that the second he takes office. It wouldn't take him long. He sits down and writes the pardons. That's all he has to do. It would take him less than an afternoon to probably bring millions of people that are very worried right now, by the way, that Trump's going to be like a tyrant. Well, tyrants don't generally free whistleblowers that might come back to haunt them later by releasing more information. It'd be a great thing. It would be just as good as putting Ron Paul in as Secretary of the Treasury. That's about all. Peace out.